let's balance this chemical equation. First, let's classify the reactants and the products. The reactants are to the left. It's C6H12O6 and O2, and they become the products, which are on the right. So, due to the conservation of mass, the amount of atoms on the reactant side has to be equal to the number of atoms on the product side. So let's split the two sides in two and write carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So let's start with the reactant side. Well, if we say that we have one molecule of C6H12O6 and one molecule of O2, well, we'll have 6 carbon, 12 hydrogen, and 8 oxygen. For the product side, we'd have 2 hydrogen, 3 oxygen, and 1 carbon. So obviously, there's a discrepancy between the amount of atoms that come from the reactant side to the product side, and that doesn't follow the law of the conservation of mass. So what we can do first is we can try to match the hydrogen together. So the amount of hydrogen on the reactant side is 12, but the amount of hydrogen on the product side is only 2, right? So how can we make this bigger? Well, we could just increase the amount of molecules of water on the product side. So if we turn this to 6, well, 6 times 2, that becomes 12, right? And now they're equal. But the important thing to note is that because there are 6 molecules of H2O, not only are there more hydrogen atoms, there's also going to be more oxygen atoms. So the oxygen atoms goes from 3 to now 6 here, 2 here. That's going to be 8, right? Okay, let's do carbon next, right? Well, there's 6 carbon on the reactant side, but only 1 carbon on the product side. So we can do the same thing for carbon dioxide, and put a 6 in front of the molecule. So now, carbon is 6. But again, right, this changes how many oxygen molecules there are. So we have 6 here, and then 12 here, because 6 times 2 is 12. So in total, that means we have 18 oxygen. So what are we going to do about that, right? Well, instead of changing glucose, C6H12O6, we want to change O2, because if we change glucose, we're going to increase the amount of carbon and hydrogen molecules, which means that we would have to change the products again, which doesn't really make sense. So we're going to change the amount of O2 molecules we have on the reactant side to make it so that we have the same number of oxygen molecules on both sides, namely 18. So we can do that by putting a 6 in front of it, right? Because now there's 6 oxygen atoms from the glucose, and then 12 from the O2, right? Because 6 times 2 is 12. So 6 plus 12, right? That becomes 18. And now there's the same amount of atoms on both sides. And that's how you balance equations.